My first guest is Republican Congressman Issa, who sits on the House Oversight Committee, one of the committees that will hear testimony from that informant. Congressman, so good to have you today. This is an important moment in history when you talk about that gag order. Let's start there. Why is that?
Well, what's important is that there's been an absence of any kind of transparency into some particularly troubling areas. One of them, which Senator Grassley has been a partner in, is the whole question of the CFIUS approval that required both Secretary Clinton and the Attorney General Eric Holder to approve. They both had conflicts. Obviously, the donations to the Clinton Foundation should have caused Hillary Clinton to recuse herself from this decision. But then the other part was, because this organization was under investigation by the Department of Justice, by the FBI, Eric Holder should have at least disclosed that, if not actually held up the deal until that ongoing investigation was concluded. Those are two troubling areas where you ask, were these people uninformed, or were they doing it for some comparatively nefarious reason?
Are you anticipating that would be the line of questioning that you and your committee would ask this informant?
Yes, it is. I mean, we're going to want to find out whether money or some other promise was made. We're certainly going to want to essentially follow the leads where they go. You know, the one thing that oversight should never do is reach a conclusion about what you're going to hear. But there's certainly so much smoke and so many examples where the American people deserve some clarity in this, obviously in the Russian involvement investigation and so on, that we've got to have it be first to us and then to the public to the greatest extent possible.
One of the questions that kind of is looming, I would say, Congressman, is why would you do a deal like this? And would there be any sort of information that we might gain about what the Russians intended to do with that much uranium from our country?
Well, the Russians would like to corner the uranium market, the same as at one time OPEC had real influence on the price of oil. And remember, back in 2010, the natural gas revolution hadn't really done as much. Nuclear was in its ascendancy in many ways. And of course, Russia is an exporter of, if you will, nuclear reactors and other uses. So there are a lot of valid reasons they would want to corner the market and be able to influence price.
I guess I ask that because we know what bad actors that they can be with the terms of energy. Look at how they treat their neighbors in terms of turning off energy when they want to. So I just wonder, why would the United States want to do a deal like this? And let's move on, because now you've got the Judiciary Committee through Chuck Grassley, who'll talk. Republican Chuck Grassley of Iowa chairs that committee and talked about why a special counsel is needed in this investigation. I want to get your thoughts on that. Let's watch.
Well, obviously there was and is justification for special counsel, Russia versus Trump. Now we've got problems with the previous administration. It seems to me that there's so many people within the Justice Department that maybe have conflicts of interest that I asked for a special counsel in regard to the investigations of Russia versus the Obama and Clinton involvements with Uranium One.
Congressman Issa, what do you think?
Well, certainly it is a possibility, and I wouldn't disagree with Chairman Grassley. From my experience, though, anytime you do a special counsel, and we're seeing it with Mueller, is the first thing that happens is nothing for a period of time. Everything sort of goes quiet. My preference for now would be active and open investigations by the committees of jurisdiction, judiciary, oversight, and so on both sides of the House. I also believe that we're long overdue to work bicamerally, meaning the House and Senate doing joint committees to try to do these investigations. Having said that, there's no question, at some point, if you're going to go from investigating to have the American people know to possible criminal prosecution, you do have to have somebody that is free from entanglement at the Department of Justice if they're part of the potential investigation. And that is where it appears to be going.
It seems logical. And, I guess you don't tie these two things together necessarily. But this also involves Russia. The scandal over the infamous Trump dossier is widening as Hillary Clinton's former spokesperson admits Hillary Clinton may have known that her campaign helped fund it. The New York Times reports that she didn't know about the dossier until the story first broke back in January. So she saw it in the media. Meantime, the president says Hillary Clinton had to have known and that this is real collusion. He calls it the story of the decade. What about this dossier?
Well, certainly what we have is a false and group of documents put together that does clearly link on one end to Hillary Clinton and the Democratic National Committee, and on the other end to Russia. What's important to understand is there were so many in-between groups used to sort of shield direct control that it's very clear that people on the one end, Russia, and on the other end, the Democratic National Committee and Hillary Clinton's campaign, they obviously wanted to create the inability to connect the dots. And when somebody goes through so many efforts, through so many surrogates to keep that from happening, you have a special reason to want to connect the dots. And so I think following to find out who really, on one end, knew what was going to happen on the other end. And again, this goes back to the assumption that I think the American people have now realized. Russia is a bad actor. Russia wants to hurt America. Russia probably doesn't really care who they hurt in America. They're happy to hurt both sides. And it appears, an investigation will show potentially, that they were perfectly happy to hurt Donald Trump in this process just as much as maybe a Facebook ad might have hurt Hillary Clinton. And I think that's why we have to continue investigating thoroughly Russia, because the next election, they're going to be better at what they do, and we have to keep them from adversely affecting our elections or other elections around the world, some of which are even easier for the Russians to manipulate.
Congressman Issa, we appreciate your time today from the great state of California. Hope you'll come back on the program. A lot of news that you just spit out. We appreciate it. Thank you.